Who is God? Whether this question has been posed to you by someone else or it's something that you're trying to figure out for yourself, it's a very big question. Who is God? Of course, we know the name of God, and there's lots of names of God that we find throughout the Scriptures. We know Him as the Father, the Creator. We find the name Jehovah and Yahweh, the great I Am. And while each of these names have a very specific meaning and tell us a small aspect of God, just knowing the name does not answer the question, who is God? 1 John 4 and verse 8 tells us that the one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is love. To love is to know Him. Now this very quickly brings up another question, much more famous question, one that's been blaring from radio stations across the country since 1992. What is love? I'm not sure that most of our country knows what love is anymore. Satan seems to have erased it from our dictionaries, and no one took notice. In a recent article, 10 people were asked to answer this question, what is love? They answered in the context of a marriage or a relationship, and yet the concept still applies. Here's a few responses that were given. One respondent said that love is having a cheerleader throughout every avenue in the journey of life. A second said the most important aspect of being in a relationship is being in sync. As long as you both are in agreement, that is what's important. And a third, the only thing they could say about love is that it's a sentiment. It's a feeling. This modern type of love, where having a cheerleader for all of my decisions, whether right or wrong, and making sure that the people around me agree with me no matter what, or else they don't love me, this kind of love, where those are the important aspects, is lazy and selfish. Is this who God is? Is this the God that we know? Paul would disagree. He tells the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 through 8 what love is. To paraphrase, he tells them that love is patient, love is kind, does not act unbecomingly, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, that it bears all things, endures all things, and love never fails. Who is God? God is patient. God is kind. God does not rejoice in our unrighteousness, and God never fails. In other places, we find that God has sacrificed for us, such as John 3:16, where we're told that God so loved the world that He gave us His only begotten Son, that He might die for each and every one of us. 1 John 4 and verse 18 tells us that God casts away all our fears. There's no fear in God, but God casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in God. And we find that God brings us together. Colossians 3 and verse 14. Above all these things, put on God, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Now, those last two verses I just read to you, 1 John 4 and Colossians 3, I've misquoted to you. You turn to your Bibles in those passages and read them, you will not find the name of God listed there, but rather you'll find love. Love. And yet, that attribute fits God because God is love. To love is to know Him, and by loving, we profess Him. To love your neighbor is to help them as God has helped each and every one of us. To love your wife is to provide for her as God has provided for you. To love your husband is to care for him as God has cared for you. To love your children is to correct and discipline them as God has corrected each and every one of us. And to return love to God is to give Him every single thing that we have because He gave all of it to us to begin with. Who is God? God is many things. There's much about God that we cannot know, but this we know. that God is love. Thank you.